The bandage on her face should have been invisible. Just another detail Gino Falco wouldn't acknowledge on a woman who scrubbed his marble floors twice a week. But when Naledi Okoye's hand flew to her cheek the moment his shadow fell across the hallway, something primitive and lethal stirred in his chest. He'd buried men for less than the terror he saw flashing in her dark eyes. "Who touched you?" His voice was silk over razor blades, the same tone he used before making people vanish. Naledi's fingers trembled against the white gauze covering her cheekbone. "No one, Mr. Falco. I had an accident." Falco moved closer. She moved back. That instinctive retreat, that small surrender to fear, ignited something in him that had nothing to do with the criminal empire he'd carved from Chicago's bones. For the first time in 17 years of ruling the Gold Coast's underworld, Gino Falco felt the ground shift beneath him. "Don't insult my intelligence," he said quietly, and the air between them changed. Naledi had cleaned Falco's Lincoln Park mansion for 7 months without truly perceiving him. He was atmosphere. Tailored suits, measured footsteps, the scent of sandalwood and leather, danger that clung to rooms long after he departed. She understood the essential facts. He paid premium rates, maintained immaculate spaces, demanded invisibility. Invisibility was Naledi's masterpiece. 29 years of being dismissed had taught her to glide through spaces without disturbing molecules. She compressed herself in doorways, muted her presence around power, perfected the choreography of existing without being witnessed. Today that careful architecture collapsed. She'd concealed the bruise as thoroughly as possible. Foundation 4 shades too pale because that's what the corner pharmacy stocked. Bandage to hide the worst of the swelling. Her supervisor at Premier Cleaning Services would terminate her contract if she appeared damaged. Amani needed winter clothes. Rent was due in 6 days. So Naledi went to work. The mansion was empty when she arrived at 3, her scheduled time. Falco was never present during her shifts, a mercy she desperately needed today. She moved through the vast library with its mahogany panels and first edition volumes, the city spreading below like a chessboard. His chessboard, the other housekeepers whispered. Gino Falco owned the Gold Coast's legitimate businesses and all its buried secrets. Naledi didn't care about his world. She cared about the $450 check that kept her daughter fed. She was dusting antique Italian sculptures when the grandfather clock chimed early. Her pulse spiked. He was never home at 3. "You're bleeding through the bandage." His voice came from directly behind her, and Naledi's entire world stopped turning. 7 months earlier, Naledi had stood in the marble foyer of the Lincoln Park mansion with her supply caddy and a single mandate: disappear. "Mr. Falco values discretion above all else," her supervisor had warned during the briefing. "You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not touch personal items. You will become heir." Naledi had nodded. She'd been heir her entire life. That first day she'd moved through the mansion like a ghost studying its haunt. 14 rooms. Venetian plaster walls. Art she recognized from her community college humanities course. A Caravaggio, a Modigliani, pieces that belonged in museums, not homes. The library alone held more books than her entire apartment building combined. She'd learned his rhythms quickly. Falco left at dawn, returned near midnight. Sometimes not at all. The mansion breathed his absence. Expensive cologne lingering in doorways, espresso cups abandoned in the study, suit jackets draped over chairs as though he'd simply evaporated from inside them. By week 3 she'd perfected her invisibility. She scheduled her shifts during his meetings, her footsteps synchronized to the hum of the central air conditioning. She never looked directly at the family photographs on the mantel. A younger Falco beside an elegant woman with his same dark eyes, both long gone according to the household whispers. She sang while she worked. Just softly. Old gospel hymns her grandmother taught her. Melodies that made the loneliness of empty mansions bearable. She only sang when she was certain she was alone. What Naledi didn't know. Gino Falco had cameras everywhere. What she didn't see, the way he'd paused the security footage on his office monitor, watching her polish the silverware in the dining room, her voice carrying through the empty space like something sacred. He'd replay those moments during conference calls with men who spoke in threats and percentages, her hymns the only honest sound in his manufactured world. Week 9, orchids appeared on the kitchen counter. White phalaenopsis, expensive and delicate. Naledi had assumed they were for a girlfriend. She'd watered them carefully, changed their decorative stones, kept them perfect for whoever he was romancing. They never died. New ones appeared every Monday without explanation. They were for her. He'd noticed her admiring the neighbor's garden through the window. Week 15, poetry books materialized on the library's reading table. Nikki Giovanni, Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou. First editions priceless. Naledi had been terrified to touch them until she found a note in Falco's sharp handwriting, for reading during breaks. She devoured them during her lunch hours, never realizing he'd seen her photographing poetry from the public library with her cracked phone screen. Never understanding that he'd spent 4 hours tracking down signed copies. Week 23, she'd found her daughter's school picture, the one from her wallet that had gone missing, framed on his desk beside his own family photographs. She'd frozen, panic flooding her veins. Had she dropped it? Would he think she was careless? Inappropriate? The frame was sterling silver. Tiffany. Naledi had carefully placed it back exactly as she'd found it, hands shaking, never speaking of it. Never questioning why a powerful man would frame a stranger's child beside his own ghosts. By month 7, she'd convinced herself she'd mastered complete invisibility. She'd been wrong. Gino Falco had seen every moment, every quiet song, every careful touch, every sacrifice made in silence. He'd been watching her since day 1, waiting for the right moment to shatter the glass wall between them. Today, bleeding through a bandage she couldn't afford, that moment had arrived. My study. Now. Falco's command cut through the air like a blade, leaving no room for negotiation. He turned without waiting for her response, his footsteps deliberate against the marble floor. Naledi's legs wouldn't move. 7 months of training screamed at her to run, to apologize, to dissolve into the walls. But something in his voice, not anger, something rawer, rooted her in place. Naledi. Her name in his mouth was a revelation. She'd never heard him say it before. Please. That single word unraveled her. He followed. The study was forbidden territory, a room she dusted but never truly entered. Dark wood panels. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A massive desk that looked carved from a single piece of walnut. Behind it, leather chairs that cost more than her annual salary. Sit. Falco gestured to his personal chair, the throne from which he orchestrated his empire. Mr. Falco, I can't. You can. He moved to the bar cart, poured amber liquid into crystal. You will. Naledi perched on the edge of the leather, every muscle coiled tight. The chair still held his warmth, his scent. She felt like an imposter, a stain on something pristine. Falco handed her the glass. Drink. I don't. It's bourbon. Drink it. You're shaking. She was. Her hands trembled so violently the liquid nearly sloshed over the rim. She took a small sip, felt fire bloom down her throat, forced herself not to cough. Falco crouched before her, bringing himself to her eye level. The movement was slow, calculated, non-threatening, like approaching a wounded animal. Look at me, he said softly. She did. Up close, his eyes weren't black but deepest brown, flecked with gold in the afternoon light. Beautiful and terrifying. His hand lifted toward her face. This time he didn't ask permission. His fingers were gentle as they peeled back the bandage, revealing the full damage beneath. Purple and yellow bruising spread from her cheekbone to her jaw. The cut was scabbed, angry. Falco's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Who did this? Each word was its own sentence, its own verdict. It doesn't matter, Naledi whispered. It matters to me. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. I'm nobody. I clean your house. You don't even know me. I know you sing Mahalia Jackson while polishing silver. His voice was steady, matter-of-fact. I know you read poetry during your lunch break. I know you have a daughter named Amani who wants to be a veterinarian. I know you take the bus an hour each way because you can't afford the closer route. I know someone put their hands on you, and I know I'm going to find out who. Naledi's breath caught. He'd been watching. Seeing. All this time she'd believed herself invisible. He'd been collecting the details of her life like precious artifacts. Naledi. His hand moved from her face to her collar, fingers ghosting over the fabric. Hey, She nodded barely. Couldn't speak. Falco drew down the collar of her uniform, revealing her throat. 5 distinct bruises marked her brown skin. Fingerprints. A hand that had squeezed, controlled, punished. The muscle in Falco's jaw jumped. When he spoke again, his voice was desert dry, lethal. A name. Give me a name and this ends tonight. You'll kill him. Not a question. I'll handle it. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. His eyes met hers, unflinching. The name Naledi. She closed her eyes. Felt tears burn behind her lids. Thought of Amani asking why Mommy's face was purple. Thought of Terrence's fist connecting with her cheekbone when she'd refused to give him rent money. Thought of 7 months working for a dangerous man who somehow made her feel safer than anyone ever had. Terrence, she breathed. Terrence Webb. The air shattered between them. Falco stood, pulled his phone from his pocket and made a call that would change everything. You're not going to work tomorrow, Falco said, pocketing his phone after the 3rd call he'd made in Italian, each one clipped and commanding. You're taking the week off. Paid. Naledi stood, legs still unsteady. Mr. Falco, I can't afford. You'll receive your full wages. Consider it medical leave. His tone left no space for argument. Then softer, and you're having dinner with me tonight. You and your daughter. What? 7 o'clock. Rossovino. My driver will collect you. I don't have anything to wear to a place like that, and Amani has school tomorrow. Wear whatever makes you comfortable. Your daughter will be fine. He moved to his desk, wrote something on embossed cardstock. This is the address. Don't be late. It wasn't a request. It was a summons from a king. Rossovino occupied a corner building in River North, unmarked except for a discreet brass plaque. The kind of place that didn't need signs because the right people already knew. Naledi's hands were ice as Falco's driver, a silent man built like a wall, opened the town car door. Amani pressed close to her side, eyes wide, taking in the white tablecloths visible through curtained windows, the suited doorman, the gleaming cobblestones. Mama, are you sure we're allowed here? Her daughter whispered. Before Naledi could answer, Falco appeared in the doorway. He'd changed into a charcoal suit, no tie, looking like he'd stepped from a magazine spread. When he smiled at Amani, something in Naledi's chest cracked open. You must be Amani, he said, extending his hand with the same gravity he'd offer a business partner. I'm Gino. Your mother works very hard for me. I wanted to say thank you properly. Amani shook his hand solemnly, her 9-year-old composure fully intact. Nice to meet you, Mr. Gino. Just Gino. He gestured them inside. Come. I had them prepare something special. The restaurant was empty. Completely. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables set for dozens, but they were the only guests. A single table by the window had been prepared, fresh roses in a low vase, 3 place settings of china so delicate it looked like lace. You closed the restaurant, Naledi breathed. I wanted privacy. Falco pulled out a chair for Amani first, then Naledi. My godfather used to say the best conversations happen without audiences. Dinner was a revelation. Homemade pasta that melted on the tongue. Chicken piccata that made Amani's eyes roll back in pleasure. Tiramisu that tasted like clouds and dreams. But it was Falco who truly captivated. He told Amani stories about Sicily, about his grandmother who grew tomatoes the size of melons, about swimming in the Mediterranean as a boy, about villages built into cliffsides where houses were painted colors that had no names in English. Blue like sadness, he said, gesturing with his wine glass, but also like hope. My nana said the sea chose the color for us. Did you have pets? Amani asked, leaning forward. A three-legged dog named Vittorio. He fought off a wolf once to protect my sister. Falco's smile was genuine, unguarded. Bravest creature I've ever known. That's what I want to be. A veterinarian. To help animals like Vittorio. Then you will be. He said it with such certainty, such finality, that it sounded like prophecy. What are you reading in school? Amani's face fell slightly. We're supposed to read Charlotte's Web, but I lost my copy on the bus last week. Falco snapped his fingers. A waiter appeared with a wrapped package, the timing too perfect to be coincidence. He'd planned this. Amani tore the paper carefully, gasped. Inside, a first edition of Charlotte's Web, and beneath it, a leather-bound collection of Roald Dahl, Beverly Cleary, Madeline L'Engle. A library's worth of treasures. Mr. Gino, I can't. You can, he said gently. And you will. Every veterinarian needs a good library. Naledi watched him with her daughter, this man who controlled empires through fear, reduced to easy laughter by a 9-year-old's knock-knock jokes. He wasn't performing. This was real. When Amani excused herself to the restroom, Falco's eyes found Naledi's across the candlelight. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing her. For seeing us. His hand covered hers on the table, warm and solid. I told you, Naledi. I've been seeing you both all along. Terence Webb woke to 3 men in his studio apartment at 4:47 a.m. He didn't scream. Couldn't. A hand covered his mouth before his brain fully processed the shadows standing over his mattress. The hand smelled like expensive leather and violence. Terence Webb. The voice came from the darkness near his window. Accented. Come. You put your hands on someone who belongs to me. Terror flooded his veins. I don't know what. A photograph landed on his chest. Naledi. Her face bruised, bandaged. Terence's stomach turned to ice. You're going to listen very carefully, the voice continued. Tomorrow morning you will go to the police station on South Racine. You will confess to assaulting Naledi Okoye. You will sign a restraining order. You will never speak her name again. You will leave Chicago by the end of the week. And if I don't? Silence. Then the sound of a gun being cocked, casual as breathing. Then we have a different conversation. One that ends with Lake Michigan. The men left as silently as they'd arrived. Terence lay in his bed, sheets soaked with sweat, until sunrise painted his walls gray. At 9:03 a.m. he walked into the police station and confessed everything. Naledi's phone rang while she was braiding Amani's hair for school. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Ms. Okoye? This is Detective Ramirez with the Chicago PD. Do you have a moment? Her hands stilled in her daughter's hair. Yes. Terence Webb came in this morning. Filed a report about an assault. He claims 3 men broke into his apartment early this morning and threatened him. He also confessed to assaulting you and agreed to a restraining order. Pause. Ms. Okoye, do you know anything about men visiting Mr. Webb? The floor tilted beneath her. No. I don't. He mentioned a name. Gino Falco. Says Mr. Falco sent them. Are you acquainted with? He's my employer. I clean his house. The lie tasted like copper. That's all. Ma'am, Gino Falco is a person of interest in several ongoing investigations. If he's threatening witnesses or... Detective, I don't know anything about that. Terrence is my ex. He's been harassing me for months. If he's trying to blame someone else for his problems, that's not my concern. Another pause. Longer this time. The restraining order is being processed. You should be safe now. But Ms. Okoye, be careful who you associate with. Mr. Falco's protection comes with complications. The line went dead. Naledi's hands were shaking again. Amani turned concerned. Mama? Who was that? Nobody, baby. Finish getting ready for school. She waited until Amani's bus pulled away before calling the number Falco had given her. He answered on the first ring. What did you do? Her voice was barely controlled. I handled it. No apology in his tone. Webb won't touch you again. The police called me Gino. They know it was you. They know you sent people to threaten him. Webb has no proof. He won't press charges. I made sure of that. You made sure. Naledi's laugh was jagged, broken. Do you understand what you've done? If Child Services finds out I'm connected to someone under investigation, they could take Amani. They could say I'm exposing her to dangerous people. Silence on the other end. Then quieter. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. This is what you do. You control things. You make problems disappear. But I'm not one of your problems, and neither is my daughter. Naledi. I can't do this. I can't be whatever you think this is. Her voice cracked. I'll send the cleaning agency someone else for your house. Please don't contact me again. She hung up before he could respond. Before she could hear the sound of something breaking in his voice. Before she could change her mind. Falco's text arrived at 11:47 p.m., 3 days after she'd hung up on him. You left your grandmother's Bible in the staff room. Come get it tomorrow. 2 p.m. I won't be here. Naledi stared at her phone screen, jaw clenched. The Bible had been Nana's, carried from Johannesburg 40 years ago, every margin filled with handwritten prayers. It was irreplaceable. He knew that. He'd probably known it the moment she'd forgotten it. She should have sent someone else. Should have asked the agency to retrieve it. But the thought of anyone else touching Nana's Bible, of explaining why it mattered, made her chest tight. So at 1:58 p.m. she stood in the marble foyer she'd sworn she'd never enter again. The mansion was silent. Empty, just like he'd promised. Naledi walked to the staff room, found the Bible exactly where she'd left it, wrapped now in pristine white tissue paper. A note rested on top in his handwriting. I had it restored. The binding was cracking. Something in her chest twisted painfully. You came. She spun. Falco stood in the library doorway, still in his suit from whatever meeting he'd attended. He looked exhausted, shadows beneath his eyes she'd never seen before. You said you wouldn't be here, she accused. I lied. He stepped aside, gestured to the library. Please. 5 minutes. I don't have 5 minutes for you. Then take them anyway. His voice was raw. Please, Naledi. Let me explain. Against every instinct screaming at her to leave, she walked into the library. The room smelled like leather and old paper, sanctuary and trap in equal measure. Falco closed the door. Didn't approach. Kept the massive desk between them like a demilitarized zone. I'm sorry, he said. For putting you at risk. For not thinking about the consequences. For acting like I could just fix everything. You can't. Naledi's hands tightened around the Bible. You can't fix this. You can't make me safe by making me more dangerous. I know that now. Do you? Her voice rose, 7 months of silence finally breaking. Do you understand what happens to women like me when we get involved with men like you? We lose everything. Our jobs. Our housing. Our children. I would never let that happen. You don't get to decide. The words exploded from her. That's the problem, Gino. You think because you have power you can control outcomes. But you can't control Child Protective Services. You can't control a judge who sees a single mother with a criminal's phone number in her contacts. You can't control the system that's been waiting for any excuse to take my daughter since the day she was born. Falco's face went pale. Naledi. I have spent 9 years being perfect. Spotless. Invisible. Working 3 jobs so no one could say I was neglecting her. Living in a neighborhood I can barely afford so she's in good schools. Never dating. Never going out. Never doing anything that could be used against me in a courtroom. Her voice cracked. And then you with your protection and your gifts and your beautiful broken way of caring, you walked into my life and threatened all of it. I didn't mean to. But you did. Tears burned her eyes. You made me visible, Gino. And visibility gets women like me destroyed. Silence filled the library like flood water. Falco stood motionless, every word landing like a physical blow. What do you want me to do? He finally whispered. Nothing. I want you to do nothing. I want you to let me go back to being invisible. To being safe. You were never safe with Webb. But I was in control. Naledi's voice dropped to something raw, honest. I knew the danger. I could manage it. But you're chaos. You're a hurricane. And I can't survive loving you. The word hung between them, truth neither had spoken aloud. Falco's composure finally shattered. You think I don't know what I am? What I cost people? His accent thickened with emotion. I've known since I was 17 what it means to love someone in my world. But Naledi, per amor di Dio, I would burn the entire empire down before I let anything happen to you or Amani. That's what terrifies me, she whispered. Because I believe you. She turned toward the door, Bible clutched to her chest like armor. Naledi, wait. Goodbye, Gino. This time she didn't look back. Day 1 without Gino Falco felt like breathing underwater. Naledi woke at 5 a.m., made Amani's lunch, braided her hair into 2 perfect cornrows. Dropped her at school. Took the bus to her first house. A tech executive's condo in Streeterville that always smelled like vanilla candles and loneliness. She cleaned the granite countertops, vacuumed the pristine carpets, watered plants that were already dying. She didn't sing. The silence followed her to the second house, the third, the fourth. By evening, her hands ached and her mind was blessedly empty. Exactly how it used to be. Exactly how it should be. Except nothing felt right anymore. Day 2 she picked up an extra shift. A penthouse in the Loop, smaller than Falco's but trying desperately to approximate the same elegance. Marble that wasn't quite Carrara. Art that wasn't quite authentic. She moved through the rooms like a machine, efficient and hollow. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The orchids are dying without you. She blocked it. Deleted the message. Tried to forget the image of white Phalaenopsis wilting in his empty kitchen. Day 3 she attended a parent-teacher conference. Amani's teacher praised her reading comprehension, her kindness to other students, her imagination. She wrote a beautiful story about a girl who befriends a king, Mrs. Chin said, smiling. Very creative. Naledi's throat closed. She nodded. Said all the right things. Left before the tears could start. That night she made Amani's favorite dinner. Jollof rice with fried plantains, her own mother's recipe. Amani picked at her plate, unusually quiet. Not hungry, baby? It's good, Mama. But she didn't take another bite. Can I ask you something? Always. Are we ever going to see Mr. Gino again? Naledi's hand tightened around her fork. No, sweetheart. That was just a special dinner. A one-time thing. Oh. Amani pushed rice around her plate. He said I could call him if I needed help with my book report. You don't need his help. You're brilliant all on your own. I know. But. Amani's voice went small. He was nice. And he made you smile. I smile all the time. Not like that. Her daughter's eyes met hers, too wise for 9 years old. You haven't really smiled since we stopped seeing him. Not the kind that reaches your eyes. The words hit like a fist to the sternum. Day 4, Naledi worked a double shift to avoid thinking. Came home to find Amani asleep on the couch, the first edition of Charlotte's Web open on her chest. She'd marked passages with sticky notes, written questions in the margins in careful handwriting. Naledi carried her to bed, tucked the book on the nightstand. Stood in the doorway watching her daughter sleep. This perfect miracle she'd built her entire life around protecting. But who was protecting Naledi? Day 5 she broke. It was a stupid thing, really. She was cleaning a bathroom. Not even an important one, just a guest bath in a house where no guests ever came, and caught her reflection in the mirror. The bruise on her face had faded to yellow-green. The bandage was gone. She looked exactly like she had before Terrence. Before Gino. Before she'd been seen. And suddenly she was crying, shoulders shaking, grief pouring out in ugly, silent sobs. As this was supposed to be enough. Invisibility was supposed to be safety. Being unseen was supposed to protect her. But it didn't feel like protection anymore. It felt like erasure. That night, Amani climbed into bed beside her, small arms wrapping around her waist. "Mama? Are you sad?" "Just tired, baby. You can be both." Amani's voice was whisper soft. "Mrs. Chin says it's okay to miss people. Even when you think you shouldn't." Naledi held her daughter tighter, breathing in the scent of cocoa butter and childhood, and admitted the truth she'd been running from for 5 days. He missed him. God help her, she missed Gino Falco like missing a limb. And invisibility suddenly felt like the most dangerous choice of all. The knock came at 1:17 a.m., soft but insistent. Naledi jerked awake, heart hammering. No one knocked on her door at this hour. No one good anyway. She grabbed the baseball bat she kept beside her bed, crept to the door, peered through the peephole. Gino Falco stood in her hallway. He looked wrecked. Suit jacket gone, white shirt wrinkled, tie loosened like a noose he'd been fighting. His hair, always perfectly styled, fell across his forehead in dark waves. He leaned against her doorframe like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Naledi." His voice was hoarse. "Please. I know it's late. I know I have no right. But please open the door." She should have told him to leave. Should have called the police. Should have protected the fragile peace she'd been trying to rebuild for 5 days. She opened the door. Up close he looked worse. Eyes bloodshot. Jaw shadowed with stubble. He smelled like whiskey and desperation. "Are you drunk?" she whispered, hyper-aware of Amani sleeping 2 rooms away. "No. I wish I was." He laughed, bitter and broken. "I've been driving around the city for 4 hours trying to convince myself not to come here. I failed. Gino, it's 1 in the morning. You can't just... I'm selling it." The words tumbled out. "The mansion. The restaurants. The everything. All of it. I've already contacted my lawyers." Naledi's breath caught. "What are you talking about?" "You were right. About everything." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so unlike his usual control it made her chest ache. "You said I bring chaos. That loving me would destroy you. And Cristo, Naledi, you were right. So I'm removing the chaos. I'm walking away. You can't just walk away from what you are. Watch me." His eyes met hers, blazing with something between determination and devastation. "I've spent 17 years building an empire that means nothing. Absolutely nothing. Beautiful restaurants full of laundered money. A mansion full of ghosts. Power built on fear. And for what? Gino. Do you know what I did tonight? I had dinner at Rossovino. Alone. At the same table where we sat with Amani. The chef made your pasta. The one you said tasted like your grandmother's cooking." His voice cracked. "And I sat there for 2 hours staring at empty chairs, realizing that every beautiful thing I own is worthless without you in it." Tears burned Naledi's eyes. "You can't put that on me. I can't be responsible for..." "I'm not asking you to be responsible for anything." He stepped closer, just to the threshold, not entering without permission. I'm telling you that for the first time in my adult life, I want something that isn't power. I want something real. And what is that? You. The word was simple, devastating. You singing gospel while polishing silver. You reading poetry on your lunch break. You braiding your daughter's hair with hands that should never have to be invisible. Naledi. The most real thing in my manufactured world. I'm terrified, she whispered. So am I. He smiled, sad and genuine. I've faced down men with guns. Negotiated with people who traffic in death. But standing here asking you to trust me? This is the most frightening thing I've ever done. What if it doesn't work? What if you leave that world and resent me for it? Then I'll resent you in a legitimate business. Maybe real estate. I've always liked architecture. He was trying for lightness, but his hands were shaking. Naledi, I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm asking you to let me try to be worthy of you. Silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and terror. Then Naledi stepped back, opening the door wider. Come inside, she said quietly. But take off your shoes. Amani's sleeping. Gino Falco stepped into her world and everything changed. They sat at her small kitchen table, the one that wobbled if you leaned too hard on the left side. Naledi made tea, cheap grocery store bags, not the loose-leaf kind Falco probably drank, and watched him fold himself into a chair meant for someone half his size. He looked absurd here. A man in $1,000 shoes sitting beneath fluorescent lighting that flickered every 30 seconds. A mafia boss drinking from a chipped mug with "World's Best Mom" printed in fading letters. He looked perfect. I'm scared, Naledi said, breaking the silence. Not of you. Of what choosing you means. Tell me. He wrapped his hands around the mug, anchoring himself. It means admitting I deserve more than survival. That I'm allowed to want something beyond making it through each day. Her voice trembled. It means believing that a man like you could actually walk away from everything for a woman like me. A woman like you, Falco repeated, something fierce in his tone. Naledi, do you have any idea what you are? You're a single mother who works 3 jobs and still finds time to braid your daughter's hair every morning. You sing hymns in empty rooms because you refuse to let the world make you silent. You're terrified, but you're here, giving me a chance I don't deserve. He leaned forward. So yes, a woman exactly like you is worth walking away from everything. Before Naledi could respond, a small voice came from the hallway. Mama. They both turned. Amani stood in her doorway, wearing pajamas covered in cartoon dogs, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Her gaze landed on Falco, confusion shifting to recognition, shifting to something like hope. Mr. Gino? He stood immediately, graceful despite the cramped space. I'm sorry we woke you, Piccola. You didn't. I heard talking. She walked closer, fearless in the way only children can be. Are you and Mama friends again? Naledi opened her mouth, unsure how to answer, but Falco knelt down to Amani's eye level. When he spoke, his voice carried the same gravity he'd used signing contracts worth millions. Amani, I need to tell you something important. Can you listen? She nodded solemnly. I care about your mother very much. And I care about you. I want to be in your lives if you'll let me. Not as someone who just takes you to nice dinners sometimes, but as someone who stays. Someone who shows up. Someone you can count on. Like a dad. Amani's voice was small, tentative. Falco's jaw tightened with emotion. If you'll have me, yes. Like a dad. But Mama said you have important work. What if you have to leave? I'm changing my work. Making it so I never have to choose between being important somewhere else and being present for you. He glanced at Naledi, then back to Amani. I'm making a promise to you right now. I will never abandon you or your mother. You're my family now. La mia famiglia. And in my world, family is everything. We protect each other. We show up for each other. Always. Amani studied him with those 2 wise eyes. Even for my school concerts? They're really boring. Especially for the boring concerts. He smiled, genuine and unguarded. I'll be in the front row. And parent-teacher conferences? Every single one. And if someone tries to hurt us again? His expression shifted, something ancient and protective surfacing. Then they will learn that hurting my family is the last mistake they'll ever make. Amani considered this, then looked at her mother. Mama? Is it okay if I love him? Naledi's tears finally fell. Yes, baby. It's okay. Amani wrapped her small arms around Falco's neck. He held her like she was made of light, like she was the most precious thing he'd ever touched. Over her daughter's shoulder, Falco's eyes met Naledi's. Ti amo, he mouthed. I love you. Naledi nodded, accepting the vow, the danger, the terrifying beauty of being seen. I love you too, she whispered back. And meant it. 3 years later. The garden smelled like rosemary and possibility. Naledi stood at the kitchen window of their Evanston home, watching Gino teach Amani how to prune tomato plants. He'd traded his tailored suits for worn jeans and a linen shirt, dirt under his fingernails, laugh lines deepening around his eyes. No piccolina you cut here at the sucker. See. His accent still thickened when he was patient, explaining things he loved. This way the plant puts energy into fruit, not leaves. Amani, now 12 and impossibly tall, stuck her tongue out in concentration. Like this. Perfetto. You're a natural. Naledi smiled, turned back to the kitchen island where she was testing recipes for next week's event. Okoye and Company. Catering had 3 corporate events scheduled, a wedding on Saturday and a private dinner for a Chicago Tribune food critic. Her business had grown from her apartment kitchen to a commercial space in Rogers Park, from just her to a team of 8. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent years being invisible in other people's homes. Now she crafted meals that made her impossible to ignore. Mama. Amani burst through the back door, dirt-streaked and glowing. The tomatoes are getting huge. Gino says we'll have enough for sauce by August. He's right. Naledi wiped her hands on her apron. How's your summer reading? Almost done with The House on Mango Street. Gino ordered me the rest of Sandra Cisneros' books. She grabbed a cucumber slice from the cutting board. Can Maya sleep over Friday? If her parents say yes. Amani squealed, hugged her, disappeared upstairs in a thunder of footsteps. Gino entered quietly, washing his hands at the sink. He'd aged in beautiful ways, silver threading his temples, a scar on his forearm from the legitimate construction business he now ran. Falco and Sons Development. No money laundering. No violence. Just architecture and honest labor. She's happy, he said, coming up behind Naledi, wrapping his arms around her waist. She is. Naledi leaned back into his warmth. We all are. I got a call today. From Rosso Vino's new owner. He rested his chin on her shoulder. They want to buy it back from me, offering twice what I paid. After leaving the underworld, Gino had sold most of his properties. But he'd kept Rosso Vino, converted it into a legitimate restaurant, donated all profits to domestic violence shelters. It was his penance, his way of transforming something beautiful and corrupt into something beautiful and clean. What did you tell them? That I'll think about it. He turned her to face him. But honestly, I don't need it anymore. That life, those places, they were monuments to a person I'm not anymore. Who are you now? She knew the answer but loved hearing him say it. Yours. He kissed her forehead. Amani's. A man who grows tomatoes and argues with contractors and comes home every night. Boring, she teased. Blissfully boring. His smile was unguarded, free. Though your success is making me look bad. Everyone wants Okoye catering now. I'm just the guy who renovates offices. You're the guy who kept his promise. Naledi cupped his face. You said you'd walk away. You did. You said you'd never leave. You haven't. I never will. They stood in their kitchen. Modest, imperfect, theirs, watching late afternoon sun paint the walls gold. Upstairs, Amani blasted music and probably texted Maya about the sleepover. In the garden, tomatoes ripened on vines. This was sanctuary. Not the Lincoln Park mansion with its marble and ghosts. Not the world of whispered names and shadow empires. This. A home built on truth. A love forged in visibility. Gino. Naledi whispered. Si amore mio? Thank you for seeing me. He pulled her closer, solid and warm and real. Thank you for letting me be seen. They stood together in the fading light, two people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and chosen the beautiful, terrifying work of staying. Finally at peace. Finally, completely, blessedly seen.